Well, good afternoon, everyone. For those who are just hopping on, my name's Makenna Sellers. I'm the Executive Director for Montana Renewable Energy Association. And if you're just joining us, we'd love to have you introduce yourself in the chat box. Tell us who you are and where you're from. And so this Exploring Energy series is a series where we'll explore topics related to renewable energy technology, tackle the latest trends in energy development, connect with experts from across industries and fields working in the future of our energy system. And so you can find any of the latest recordings from our Exploring Energy series on our YouTube page, which I'm going to go ahead and drop into the chat along with these introductions. Thank you, everyone. See Carl and Ian and Dave. I haven't said hello yet. Hello, hello. So if you'd like to see any of our past Exploring Energy series recordings, you can do so on our YouTube page. We hold this virtually on the first Wednesday of the month at noon. Do these in usually on the lunch hour. They take about 30 to 45 minutes. We try and bank for about 20 to 30 minutes of core presentation and then the remainder Q&A. So we can have this dialogue in this space together to talk about energy topics and educate ourselves and come together with like-minded folks and stakeholders. Some of our past topics have included microgrid basics, CPACE implementation. I see that Seth Lutter is here from the Facility Finance Authority. If you want to talk about CPACE, Seth would totally be your guy. Energy efficiency finance, that's an energy efficiency financing tool that was recently implemented in Montana. We've done topics on energy subsidies, and our most recent, last month, we talked with the Indigenized Energy Initiative and discussed how the outlook on Indigenous-led renewable energy innovation connects with tribal sovereignty. So really great topics. I think that the Fair and Events team does a great job of picking the topics. And next month, so our next Exploring Energy will be November 2nd. That's a Wednesday. So the first Wednesday of the month at noon, we'll be talking about IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. What we know, what we don't know, some of the missing pieces for implementation, because I know that there's a whole lot of folks and folks that I've been hearing from within the membership of MREA as well that are really interested in what we have going there in this historic piece of legislation at the federal level. So everyone knows all attendees started out muted. You do have the ability to mute and unmute yourself. You can submit questions directly through the chat. Because I'll be sharing my screen a fair amount, I'll be trying to find and answer those questions at the end of the presentation. And so if we don't get to your question, I am saving a record of this chat. Also, this is being recorded so that we can put these on the YouTube for future folks to go ahead and visit and take a look at some of the past Exploring Energy series topics. And so if we don't get to your question today before we wrap up here at 1 o'clock, I'll be sure to follow up with an email. But the content of the Exploring Energy series today, I just gave you a bunch of the past topics, is about meeting with the executive director, which is myself. I'm going to give a little background about who I am, where I come from, and the vision as I have interpreted it between members, board, and myself for the future direction of the Montana Renewable Energy Association. So I'd love to see this as more of like a two-way dialogue after I give you the spiel and introduction of who I am and what I do. And that's generally what we have planned today. So a little different off of the normal path of our Exploring Energy series. We'll just be having a good discussion. And I really do want to hear about what's most important to the membership. I started in mid-September, so we're 3 weeks on the job, 3.5 weeks on the job. So very, very excited to continue to learn and grow with you all here at MREA. All right. Make sure I can change the slide. There we go. So a little background on MREA for those who aren't longtime members, maybe you're joining for the first time. MREA was founded in 2001. We're a membership-based organization and a 501c3, meaning that we're serving a social good and we're not just an industry association. There's a lot of other solar and renewable energy and storage associations across the United States that are strictly just industry-based. And so I think that's one of the unique parts of MREA is we are this conglomerate of business professionals, industry professionals, associated financing institutions, lawyers, students, households, And I think that all of that knowledge pooled together with this association makes MREA a really unique organization and a really valuable organization that brings some diversity to the discussion of the future of renewable energy in Montana. If you want to check out our mission, it's to foster growth of renewable energy for all Montanans through education, through advocacy, and through industry engagement. So those three buckets, for lack of a better word, I know we say buckets a lot. Those three buckets are the primary focuses of MREA. And so some of our education has been for solarized projects, Solar 101. We do a lot of energy efficiency presentations. We present at universities. We most recently attended the Climate Smart Missoula Climate and Clean Energy Fair. And education is a really, really big and key focus of what we do. We also do a lot of advocacy at the legislature and get involved in Public Service Commission and utility proceedings because we can't have a renewable energy future where renewable power is the driver of the economy and the driver of Montana's lives, having our renewable energy vision down the road. We have to have some legislative engagement as well as engagement at the utility commissions in order to move that mission forward. And then industry engagement, we have installers, business professionals, not just solar installers. We've got folks who are architects. We've got folks who install hot water systems. We have a really broad membership base in the industry of efficiency, geothermal, solar, wind. We have businesses that are on the smaller side as well as larger institutions. So that's a little bit about MREA and what we do. So at this point, I'm going to stop the screen share so I can see some of your faces. That's a lot better. And if anyone wants to put themselves on screen to say hi, you're more than welcome to. I see some people getting on. And so I'm going to give you just a little background about myself, which feels kind of funny. Just giving you a little, it's like we're sitting at coffee or something. Just pretend we are on our little lunch. Oh, hi there, Ethan. Nice to see your face. Give me just 1 second. That's the MREA phone. Thanks all. All right. So a little bit about myself. I was born in Anchorage, Alaska, but I've spent the majority of my life living in Montana. My folks are in Billings, and so I grew up with pretty much a blue-collar family that didn't have much to do in the energy policy space or kind of empowering individuals to take charge of the power that affects the course of our lives and the decisions that affect the course of our lives. So my career has leaned a lot into grassroots advocacy and community organizing. I worked with a nonprofit called Northern Plains Resource Council. They're based in Billings, Montana, incredible organization of folks, and some of them are actually on this call who are members, but it's very much a member-driven organization that empowers tools with the folks to influence the decision-making that impacts their lives, especially in ag, environment, clean energy, environmental cleanup. There's just so much in the scope of what Northern Plains focuses on. So that's where I basically cut my teeth and got my chops in the organizing space. I served as a lobbyist for Northern Plains in the 2019 and 2021 legislative session. So a lot of my background is also in lobbying and engagement and renewable energy policy. Some of those primary focuses were in the clean energy space, where I worked pretty closely with a few legislators to help pass a proactive energy efficiency bill, actually most recently at the 2021 legislative session, and that was CPACE. So that's Commercial Property Assessed Capital Enhancements. It's an energy efficiency financing tool for commercial properties to make upgrades to their building without the upfront cost. And so that was the work of a huge coalition in multiple years, but I think that some of the learning that I did at the legislature and as a lobbyist, specifically on CPACE, gave me a lot of lessons learned that set me up for, hopefully, for some great success being the executive director and lobbyist for MREA as we address net metering policy, potentially community solar. And typically at the legislature, we do play a lot of defense to make sure that we're maintaining a more fair and equitable policy space for the industry to flourish. So that's a little bit about my time at Northern Plains. And then after that, I worked for the Montana Nurses Association. So that's where we focused mostly on labor relations and contract enforcement. I still think that's a really powerful space as well, bringing some of the labor points of view into my vision here at MREA. Some fun things about me. I get to sing with the Helena Symphony Chorale, so that's something I do for fun. I also have my dog, and we do a lot of trail running and hiking together around Helena. I don't think I told you all that, but I am based in Helena, Montana. I know my predecessor, Andrew, was in Missoula. Yeah, so I'm based in Helena, really close access to the capital. Could probably walk up there in 10 or 15 minutes. And so I definitely plan to use that to our advantage for MREA. Okay, so I think we got through all of that. As far as the primary values for sort of my ethos, I think it has a lot to do with ownership, empowerment, and resilience, whether that's with grassroots everyday folks and community organizing, or with nurses, or in the space of MREA where we have this conglomerate of industry professionals and households. I think that providing folks the tools to have ownership over their renewable energy future and some of the decisions they make at their house or in their jobs to address the impending climate emergency that's kind of looming over us like a dark cloud. I know there are so many people in Montana that are actively working on these things, and it's a pleasure to get to know, and having worked with a number of them over the years. But I think that the part of my mission that I'm bringing into the MREA space is focused on ownership, empowerment, and resilience when the going gets tough. We know that Montana doesn't have as big or established of an industry as some of the other states across the U.S., say, or even in the West, say Colorado, for example, or California or Washington. But I think that resilience when the going gets tough is already something that I've seen evidence through Montana Renewable Energy Association, through our history and our growth. But that's something that I want to continue to perpetuate. So those topics kind of came to mind when we're talking about vision. Ownership, resilience, and empowerment are those words just tend to come to mind for me when I'm thinking about where we're headed with MREA. Okay, and I will get to the chat questions once we go through the spiel and I finish some of the slides, because I see a few and I don't want to miss them. So I will get to those at the very end. Okay, I'm going to go back to the slides. Here we go. Okay, so we talked a little about MREA. Now let's talk about the direction that the organization is going. We're really positioned for success. Andrew did such an excellent job leading MREA over the course of 5.5 years, and the board and members are really active. I've been super impressed getting to know everyone, having the discussions with folks, and so I want to share with you some of what my focus is going to be and some of the top themes that I see as important for MREA in the coming 6 months, year, 2 years. This is a basic idea, but our members are our power. So I would love to see Montana Renewable Energy Association match the energy and success of what's happening in the renewable energy industry in Montana right now. It feels like every other week there's a new, either a new business on the national or regional scale coming in to do work in Montana, or a new company opening up. And I think that's really amazing. And the direction that we're going is positive, as long as we're keeping the industry, like the quality of the industry and the quality of our folks who are already here established and have created really wonderful reputations in the solar and energy efficiency space. We really want to maintain that. So I would love to see, and I think that MREA has a ton of room for membership growth. And if you talk to most people on the street also, like, people support renewable energy and they think it's a fascinating topic and it's worthy of our time. So that's one place where I plan on putting a lot of my focus, is paying more attention to the power structures of, like, well, people power is something that I definitely believe in, but the more members we have, the more networks we have across Montana and the rest of the state. And I think that MREA can play a wonderful role of convener, even for utilities. If utilities are trying to solve a problem, say there's a co-op who wants to put solar on all of their co-op owned buildings. We can pair the right people together because that's part of what MREA does. We're bridge builders and we're conveners. So that's where I see some great growth potential for MREA. The Montana Rural Solar Access Project. This is something that's been going on for 2 or 3 years, started by my predecessors. The idea was bringing more solar education and accessibility in the far reaches of Montana that don't normally get that attention. We think that access to renewable energy, regardless of your socioeconomic income, your job, or where you live, are really important parts of MREA and what we believe in. So the Rural Solar Access Project connects that mission to real life action. I know that in 2021 as well as 2022, MREA visited 10 different rural communities and put on different education workshops. We also started with a baseline of figuring out, okay, well, what is the need? We know that accessibility is an issue. What's the need? What are we hearing on the ground? What are the barriers? And we talked with our installer members as well as people who live in more rural communities to see, like, what are we missing and how can we be that bridge builder to make renewable energy more accessible for more Montanans? So I think that the Rural Solar Access Project is a really strong, it's a strong mission. It's a really strong project for us to continue to work on. And so I plan on putting some focus into the continuation of the Rural Solar Access Project. And then these are to be expected, but I'm talking about the legislature and the PSC. Can I go back? Yes. So you know what's coming. I think that continuing to put our advocacy focus at the state legislature, defending net metering, and also making sure that the policies enacted in the state of Montana make renewable energy possible. We know that there's federal legislation that everyone's real excited about, but we haven't quite nailed down like the how. Like, how is that going to be implemented? What's going to happen? And there's still a lot of moving parts with that. I'm super excited to put some attention into that work and apply some of the things from IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure into what that could mean for Montana and making sure we're connecting the right people to the right grant opportunities. So even with that money coming down the line, I still think that it's very critical when we maintain our presence at the state legislature and at the Public Service Commission. We want to establish a regulatory landscape that provides for the fair and equitable advancement of renewable energy. And it all comes together because when our members are a power, when we have a stronger membership base, we are more successful with our outreach, with our work at the legislature, and with enough funding to go forward with hiring the right lawyers and getting the right subject matter experts into the Public Service Commission. And MREA has already had success in that space. We defended net metering at the end of 2020. I think it was 2019, 2020 at the most recent rate case. So that's something that we definitely continue to plan on doing. The other thing, this is another like 6 months down the road priority. I plan on having a lot of face-to-face interactions. And since the start of my tenure at MREA in mid-September, we've been on the road a number of times, been to Missoula twice, planning on continuing to meet most of our membership, especially our business professional members, making sure that we are serving them to the best of our ability and we understand the needs of the organization, and our organization's power is based on our membership. So I've been out with Susan over at the Electrify the Big Sky conference put on by the Missoula Electric Co-op and Clearwater Credit Union with a number of other sponsors. But beyond just going out to conferences and tabling and being present, Mark Judeman's another person on the call. He and I got to table at the Climate and Clean Energy Expo hosted by Climate Smart Missoula. Beyond just that, I'm going to be doing a lot of travel. And so if you're an installer member, you should expect to be hearing from me or getting a phone call. And I think that Zoom is wonderful, but it's not the end all be all. That in-person interactions are super important to me. So that's also what I'll be doing over the next 6 months to a year. You'll be seeing a lot from me. Well, that concludes what I had to discuss with you all about who I am, what I do, and sort of the direction that we'd like to see for MREA. And I want to tie this together to say that the vision that I know you all have, because you took the time to be on this call, learn about me, learn about the future of MREA, It's because you care about the success of the organization. And we know we can't do that without our members and without the monetary strength behind it. So if you're not a member yet, I really encourage you to go and visit our website and sign up as a member. You'll be involved in the newsletters. You have the ability to vote on our board members. You can get involved with committees. There's just so many opportunities to grow the renewable energy industry and bring your skills to this shared space. So I'm putting the Join MREA URL link into the chat. And if you are already a member, I'd love for you to consider making a one-time donation for this executive director transition. Andrew set us up for success. He's been a wonderful help as I make the transition into this new space. But at this time, MREA staff is a party of one. That's me. We have had more staff in the past, and I have a goal to raise enough funding to expand our staff to really meet the needs of the organization. But we're not able to do that until we have a strong enough member base and strong enough revenue to make that happen. So I'd encourage you, if you are able, make a one-time donation for the ED transition, which you can also do with that same link. All right, feel like I was talking a whole lot, but I'm very excited to answer any questions and also take a look if there were any questions that came into the chat. Okay. Robin from Arrow asked about the IRA Exploring Energy series, and Mark answered that will be Wednesday, November 2nd at noon. We'll be talking about IRA, what we know, what we don't know, what's left to figure out. Okay, and the easiest link for signing up on Exploring Energy, and Miranda took care of that. Thanks, Miranda. Okay, so I'm opening the floor for any questions. And if you would like to make an introduction of yourself and why you care about MREA and what thoughts are on your mind, I'd love to have this as a two-way street.
I'm not a fast typer, so it's easier for me to chat, to just talk with you. I really loved how you talked about with Northern Plains, it was very membership driven. And I could be wrong on this, but it seems like with MREA that Diana and Andrew were a little more influenced by the board and interaction with the board to get more input from membership, other than like the newsletter and everything. What do you think might be some strategies for better engaging with membership and how that might influence increasing membership?
Yeah. I like that question a lot. I guess I remind us that the board are members, so the board making the decisions on the direction of MREA, that's membership driven in itself. I'd say some of the strategies that come to mind for me, I got real excited this week. I was talking with the Colorado Solar and Storage Association executive director, and they do they call them like utility workshops. So not only do they provide some of the Solar 101 for a household, but they provide connectivity and expertise almost as a service for the utilities. And then their members help provide that service, which is mutually beneficial, right? Because if an installer is going to connect with a utility for a project, or say a municipality that wants to do solar on all their government buildings, being that connection point is a value added for everybody. It means that the city gets their project done and they didn't have to do all the work of making a million phone calls and navigating kind of a murky process, because we know all that. We know what the permitting process looks like. We know what can and can't be done for community solar or aggregate net metering. Like, we know our own limitations within the state, or the limitations that are set forth for us. So I think that being that connection point to get projects off the ground is one strategy to make sure that our membership is seeing the value added of what we do beyond just our going out doing the outreach and education. Like, on the value side, we have something tangible at the end of the day. So I like that idea. I think we'd explore that later. I had a bunch of ideas buzzing around my head when we talked this week with that Colorado ED. So I'd like to see what we could do there. Other thoughts, questions? I see Mark.
Yeah, hopefully you can hear me well. I guess I'm curious, you're in week 3, if you have some ideas about moving into rural spaces and engaging folks as a result of the MRSAP study, how we might proceed with that.
Yeah, it's an uphill challenge. I think that we knew from the beginning that rural access is really tough. However, it's really important for Montana. I think we've got a lot of rural communities that aren't getting as much attention as some of the major cities, where we also are trying to compare cost and being reasonable about like how much time, effort, and energy it takes to complete a project. If we're talking strictly about how many solar systems can we get out in the rural spaces of Montana. I think I'm going to connect that back to the IRA. I think that the federal funding opportunities that exist there, and with state guidance, we might be able to change the financial picture. And that could be a good path forward. I also think that I have heard mixed reviews on messaging around the IRA because we haven't seen the fruits of the legislative labor, so to speak, yet. Most folks are just seeing the big dollar signs connected with how much money the government decided to spend, how much money Montana is going to be getting. And yeah, I guess the narrative that I've heard so far in conversation is like, oh, well, our kids are going to be paying for this for generations, where I think a opportunity for narrative and an opportunity just for education is to understand like what will the fruits of this labor really be, because I think right now people are a little astounded and mystified by the dollar sign. So how can we, if that's what I'm hearing, and if that's what I'm hearing in rural spaces, if that's what I'm hearing as far as the general Montanan right now, who isn't as closely involved in the renewable energy space, what are we able to do as MREA to at least provide another side of that coin for the possibilities that could come with IRA and some of the federal funding that will make sense for Montana, because Montana isn't California and Montana isn't the East Coast. So making some of those connection points in a way that's relatable for folks is another strategy I think we have to employ for the Solar Access Project.
Hey, Makenna, this is Seth with MFFA and CPACE. So really just congratulations on the new position, and hope to keep both of our organizations working well together. So congrats.
Thank you, Seth. Thanks for making the time to be here. And if you want to do a short plug, does anyone not know about CPACE and CPACE implementation? If Seth wants to take 30 seconds to 60 seconds on the mic, you should.
I could do it. So CPACE, Commercial Property Assessed Capital Enhancements, like Makenna just discussed. Yeah, it's a financing program for commercial buildings, property owners in Montana, that if they're looking at getting renewable energy or saving on energy efficient upgrades to their building or improvements or water upgrades, there's CPACE, which can finance these at good rates, good terms, and the financing is actually put on the tax assessment of the property itself. So cash flow really helps out with those businesses as well. So it's a new program that just launched beginning of this year. And the MFFA, which is who I'm associated with, the Montana Facility Finance Authority, we're the ones administering this program. So lastbestpace.com, you can learn all about the CPACE program.
And can that money go towards new construction, or is it just for existing building?
Great question. It can go towards new construction and retrofit of old buildings. Also, it can go towards retroactive. So if a business owner did improvements in the last 36 months, they can also get basically refinanced through CPACE.
Right. And are you doing any education to make sure that architects and building designers are aware of this? Because it's just so much harder when you have an existing building to do, the added insulation and the efficient. So much better when it's designed the right way, even if it's
yeah, exactly
above code. So do you have any plans for educating?
We do. We're actually The MFFA, we're a small little organization of 3 people. We're administratively connected to the Department of Commerce. So 99% of what we do is hospital finance. We finance basically all the nonprofit healthcare centers and hospitals in Montana. So when we took on CPACE, we were like, okay, we can work through this and really make sure that we make those connections and reach out to all the right groups. We're actually in the process of hiring a CPACE program manager because of all of the questions and input and interest that we've been getting across the state. So we have reached out to a lot of these groups, but we haven't done it to the degree that we wish that we could. So we're actually hiring somebody to come in and start really doing boots on the ground type of work like that, even more.
Last CPACE question, Seth. Since you have seen some projects at least putting in some submissions and applications to get CPACE off the ground, I know that there is a certain kind of minimum size for the financing to make sense. Like how much money are you really putting into these upgrades, and depending on how long the payment process is, that I know that is a tough needle to thread. So have you guys seen a ballpark, or do you even have like the minimum for a business to understand like who's the right people to even bring up CPACE into the financing discussion?
Yeah, definitely. And that is one of the questions that we get on a regular basis. And like I said, we're still kind of threading that needle, but our floor for a project to make sense. So real quick, I'm going to take a step back and say CPACE projects, the savings on the improvements have to pay for the project itself. So the savings have to be equal to or greater than the cost of the project. So like a small project won't really work out because the savings aren't going to be as good as or aren't going to be as great as the cost, especially if you stretch it out over a 20-year term with interest involved. So the floor that we've been discussing and kind of we've set for CPACE programs is if it's about $100,000 or more is where it really starts to pencil out and we can see good savings.
Great. Thanks. And I think even just having that ballpark means that we're directing the businesses that have that level of upgrades to undertake. We're sending them to the right place, and we're making sure, we're not sending somebody where it just would never pencil out. We're not going to send them down a rabbit hole. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Seth.
And I appreciate that. We've got quite a few people that have reached out. They're like, oh, we're doing this $5,000 or $10,000, improvement. And just the savings just aren't really going to be there for those smaller projects. So I appreciate that as well. If you do that kind of base review and somebody say, I'm looking at doing this and it's going to be $200,000 estimated, perfect. Send them our way. Let's see what we can do for them.
Great. Thank you, Seth. And thanks for taking the time on the spot. I didn't prep him. He's just that good. Seth is a really good.
Thanks, Makenna.
Yes, he's a really good lead, and we're happy to have MFFA on the CPACE implementation. They've just done an incredible job. And also Adam Gill, who's on this call. I want to thank them both for putting the time and energy into making sure that the project was successful after the bill was passed. Any other questions or just like lingering thoughts on your mind? Yeah, Susan.
I was thinking when you were talking about, and I had asked this of Andrew earlier, the Montana Rural Solar Access Project, it was mainly emphasized solar, and I feel like MREA tends to emphasize that, probably because most of our industry members install solar electric systems. And we're and as you know, we attended the Electrify the Big Sky conference, and the tendency is going towards that all electric, getting away from the thermal technologies for heating water and air and all of that. Yet, well, and this is kind of a combination of thermal and electric, transpired solar collectors. I just am enamored with them. MSU uses them. It's dark perforated metal on the south side of a building, and a fan draws the hot air up, and it provides a lot of preheated ventilation air and really reduces heating costs. And I have felt like that's a technology that MREA could and should maybe help promote and educate consumers about, specifically in the agricultural industry, because they have so many large buildings that need some heated air. So when there's not a new technology, but a different technology that we haven't normally promoted, what do you think would be a good way for us to move forward if the board and membership were supportive of that?
I had to check my mute button. Yeah, so the question is, when there is new technology on the table or innovations, and are you thinking just in the context of the solar access project, or more broadly on MREA's mission and role within Montana?
Both, kind of.
Yeah. Well, part of our, if we're thinking about the three buckets that MREA focuses on, education is such a huge part of what MREA does and where we spend our time, money, and resources. So I think that maybe carving out space for innovation, but also going back to our installers or the folks who would be like following through on a project like that, to have an open floor without causing any sort of disruption with having preference for one company over another, maybe creating some open floor space, but then making sure that we're bringing the consumers to the table as well, so that there's like I said, mutual self-interest, right? So the business is getting something out of it, the consumer is getting something out of it. And consumer can mean our members, consumer can be someone who just found MREA and wants to stay up to date on the potential of our most innovative technologies and try to take that and put some more applicability into Montana. I could see there being space for that. But it's part of our strategic plan also to improve some of our hard copy resources that MREA provides. I mean, we do have a ton of different documents that are available on our website. We hold these Exploring Energy series where we can take a deep dive on a topic. Maybe we could hone in on, rather than some of these bigger themes like microgrids or CPACE, which are sometimes policy, sometimes in the tangible, like hard physical space, if we're talking about microgrids, nuts and bolts and wires. Maybe we can save some of these Exploring Energy series to talk about technology applicability. Like you said, the transpired solar collectors, that could be something we talk about. So I'd love to stay open to that, while also thinking along the lines of who will the audience be, like who will we be serving, and whose time is it going to take to bring the right message to the space. But I like that. I think those are good ideas. And now with the federal incentives, there are, I'm hearing a little bit of background. If folks can mute, or unless you have a question, go ahead and speak up. But we know that our hard copy resources and our takeaways are something that folks really value. Like we have so you want to go solar and you don't know where to start, we have a step-by-step guide, because usually that's the barriers. Like we all have these intentions and ideas and folks don't know where to start, especially if they're not a member of MREA, they're not involved in the energy world. So if MREA can provide that step-by-step guide in a way that's helpful, connects them to the right people, and doesn't mean that folks are spinning their wheels day in and day out. Maybe we can add some technology like resources and PDFs that we can include on the website too. So I like that idea. Other thoughts, questions from the group?
We know there are so many things going on. What do you think might be one of the major barriers to MREA achieving its mission and goals? I know the legislative sessions coming up, but just thinking of perhaps the three buckets, maybe you could pick one per bucket, that kind of thing.
I think so this is 3 weeks on the job. Ask me again in 6 months, or ask me again in a year, and perhaps the answer will be different. But my observation since starting with Montana Renewable Energy Association, as far as barriers to achieving our mission, might be that we're just spread out a little thin, that we have a number of goals to accomplish, and deciding which one gets the most attention. Is it on the industry side? Is it on the education and solar 101 for homeowners? I think that our tendency is to try and tackle everything all at once. So matching our time, matching our money, matching our membership to the needs that we can accomplish, I think can sometimes be a barrier, because there's a lot at stake and there's a lot that we have to pay attention to. And MREA to date has done a really successful job of punching above our weight class, so to speak. I think that MREA has gone above and beyond what a small organization typically does, or an equivalent of us if we were plopped down in another state. I think that the network that MREA has and the passion and the expertise that we all share is something that has made MREA successful for 20 years and counting. So I think the decision making on where we're focusing our time and energy to achieve goals. Are we putting more time in the industry space? Are we putting more time into the households? And like, what do we get from both of those? Those types of questions, I think, are barriers that we'll continue to navigate, which we will do successfully because we'll do it together. Okay, I see Rick's hand is raised.
Yeah, thanks, McKenna. I know we're talked a little bit about the IRA and we're going to talk more about it. But one of the exciting things that I see in it is that nonprofits are going to be able to get at the 30% solar credit back. So I think MREA ought to be thinking about, working with nonprofits here in the next year and try to get some of those projects on board, because that's going to be a game changer in terms of being able to implement solar and do it in a financially capable way. So I just wanted to mention that again. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely, Rick. And making sure municipalities know about the direct pay option with the tax credit, because most of the time tax credits don't make a whole lot of sense for municipalities because they're not paying taxes. Homeowners and businesses are. But if that can change the financial picture for governmental entities who are trying to be fiscally responsible with taxpayer money to move forward with solar renewables and efficiency upgrades that we know so many buildings desperately need. I don't know if you've been into any of your public buildings lately around your town, but they usually need a little help. And we know that they have old systems and needs of upgrades, and those upgrades can be job creators and industry bastions. So that's a great reminder, Rick. And I think that's a role that MREA can continue to play. And in rural spaces as well. So it ties back to Mark's original question about the Solar Access Project.
If you had one message for the membership of MREA, what would it be?
That's a big one. I think it ties back to the ownership mantra or theme that I brought up at the beginning of the presentation. We have such an amazing wealth of knowledge within the MREA membership. And there are folks that come from so many walks of life, whether that's the young family who just joined because they believe in renewables. When they were at the Clean Energy Fair we just held in Butte this August, or the industry professional or business member that's been installing solar on homes for 10, 15, 20 years and counting, that everyone brings something different to this space. And so I want to make sure that our membership feels ownership and can take ownership over the direction of MREA. And you can do that by being on the board, like what Susan and Mark are currently doing. You can do that by being part of any of our committees where we focus on the latest and greatest in safety recommendations in the installer space, policy requirements. We do fair and events. We have that committee that focuses more on the Clean Energy Fair, our energy series like this, and how we're reaching out to everyday Montanans. So there are so many spaces where I know that our membership's wealth of knowledge can contribute to the success of the organization. So my message would be, I hope that everyone feels the ownership over the organization that you all have built and you all are so deeply, deeply a part of. And I have the joy and honor of now being a part of as well.
McKenna, I have a question.
Hi, Claudia. Yes.
Hi. Now, can MREA be a resource for individuals for their homes?
Absolutely. Yes, 100%. So MREA, in terms of resources, like if you're asking for materials or if you're asking for help on how to upgrade your home to be more efficient, or perhaps you're looking at building a net zero home, I think that we pull together really excellent case studies and we can connect you to the right people. So absolutely. And like I said at the beginning of this presentation too, MREA has a unique niche compared to some of the other solar industry associations across the United States. Because we are a C3, we are not strictly an industry association. We capture like stakeholders and supporters from all types and stripes. And so I think that our work and our mission reflects that diversity, that we're not just in the weeds, even though we're often very influential and spend a lot of time and energy looking at Public Service Commission case proceedings. So we really do go across the gamut. And so absolutely, we will help folks connect to the right resources for homeowners.
And what do you mean by C3?
Sorry, I got a little bit into the nonprofit jargon. So that's a classification for nonprofit groups that focus on community good or social goods. And there's different classifications for folks that are part of different associations. Like the Realtors Association is typically a bunch of realtors paid dues to make decisions on how they'd like to position the Realtors Association for policies in their state or policies in whatever community they have. We capture that, but we are also, as a 501c3, we are working for the public good and social goods as well for a clean energy future. So they are distinct. They're distinct in their tax picture basically as well too. And the government defines these groups in different ways. So a C3 is what MREA is. We're a 501c3 nonprofit.
Yes, thanks.
Of course. Okay, so we're about 50 minutes in. I am going to say that is a wrap. And I so appreciate everyone's time coming and joining us for this conversation. I'm putting my email address and my phone number here on the slide. I'd love to hear from you. If it's a question, great, I want to hear it. If it's just a hi, welcome, or hey, I have this complaint about XYZ, I really do want to have an open line of communication with the membership. And I think that having that is helpful for me and hopefully helpful for the members as well. So please drop me a line at any time. I'm excited about the direction that this organization is going. And like I said before, it's just really built for success. 20 years and counting. It's gone through, we have resilience at MREA, through good policies and bad. And I think that all of the folks that make this organization successful is just really special. And so that's why I like coming to work every day and doing this stuff. So thank you for attending. Really appreciate it. Do send me an email and say hi, hello. And we hope to see you next month, November 2nd at noon, to talk about IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, what it is. What do we need to do? We're all really excited about it. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Thanks.